Welcome. Today, I thought I'd share with you a little bit about some of the things that I utilize to bring forward a Divine Spiritual Calligraphy. If you're not sure what a Divine Spiritual Calligraphy is, actually check my website, www.garysvitsky.com, and I have some videos that describe a little bit of what a Divine Spiritual Calligraphy is and how you can utilize that in your life. So Divine Spiritual Calligraphies are done in sort of two categories. One that is ones that I do for public expression, like the ones you see behind me here and on the walls, are part of a series, 28 calligraphies that was done for the book Divine Messages. And there's others that I do that I kind of share publicly. The other category is private, personal calligraphy messages that I will do for people who are looking for that personal calligraphy and message that's specifically just for them or someone, a loved one, or something to do with their specific journey. So if you're not sure, how does this happen? How do we go from I would like a calligraphy to actually having a calligraphy, and what is involved with that? So that's what I want to share with you today. A little bit of the things that I use to physically bring forth a Divine Spiritual Calligraphy. So let's begin. The first thing we need to consider is what are we going to do the calligraphy on? So that could be essentially could be almost anything. I use inks mostly to do calligraphies, so but not limited to inks. So really, if I'm doing it on a medium of some kind, it would be a lot like this. This is like a type of rice paper, parchment paper. So this is a 5x7, and it is absorbent, so it absorbs ink well. The ink does not, splay out very much. It works very well for that type of, for what I'm doing there. Also, often I will use, if somebody are these things, which is very similar type of material, a little bit thicker, and it is surrounded by a silk brocade. So these come in many different colors, gold, yellow, white, blue, the one you see here, red, and they also come in a larger size. This is like a 8x10 size. The larger size would be like a 12x16. I also do for people scrolls. This is really a small to medium sized scroll, so you kind of get the idea of the size here. And a lot of times people may ask for something like that, especially if they want something a little bit larger to hang up. And other scrolls could be quite significant in size. So you can see how this one is well over 6 feet long and very wide. And this is what I would call like a large to an extra large size scroll. Now, all that being said, I have done calligraphies where somebody has commissioned me to come to their home, and I've done it along, like if you look at the wall behind me, along their wall. So I did one for somebody, it was 14 calligraphies across their room, right at the top of their wall. So I've done things like that too. So I've done that that was right on the painted wall. And I would use something different to do it in that case. Most of the ones I do are in a medium like this, where it's on a rice paper or a parchment paper type of thing. A lot of them are in the small size, 5x7s, 8x10s, 12x16s, or also the scrolls that would be quite large. So that's the size and the materials that I use a lot. When I am doing a calligraphy, then depending on the size of the scroll or the size of the parchment paper, then I need to choose different brushes. I have lots of brushes. It started out with not that many brushes, but now it's large brushes. So if I'm doing a very large calligraphy on a large medium, like a very large scroll, then I would use a brush something like this. So this is an example of a large calligraphy brush. So, and requires a lot of ink to fill this brush to do a calligraphy. Some of the other brushes I might use, which are for a medium to large size brush, and these are a little bit different, and these are very more like a modern type brushes you would use for different types of artwork, but they sometimes lend themselves very well to doing a larger calligraphies. And then there are brushes that are very traditional, Asian calligraphy brushes. So this is one I would use very often. This is probably how you normally would see them. It's like this, and so you're usually, when you're drying them, you want to dry them to this nice point so they keep the shape of the brush very well. So this is one I would use often. Sometimes when they dry and they get moved around with all the other brushes, they'll loosen up a little bit and they'll end up like this. But when the ink is filled into that brush, it would be a point like this. So then the technique you'd be using either this to create a finer point or to do a nice broad stroke where you see those brush strokes. And then I also have smaller versions of those, also, which I would use, to do those little seals in order. So it's a very finer type of brush. So the brushes would vary in size, and depending on how large calligraphy I'm doing, or in some cases on what I'm doing the calligraphy on. I've even done some calligraphies on canvas, so that is a option. It's not the best medium to use for what I'm doing here with regards to the calligraphies and the inks, but we can do that. I've also done them with Sharpies, by the way. So if you have a nice marker type thing, you can do a nice quick calligraphy for somebody in that regards. So there's lots of different mediums that I could use, but if I'm using the inks, it's best to have something that's a little absorbent to be able to absorb that ink. And if it has a finish on the surface, then it takes a long time for the ink to dry. So that's the brushes. Now I've been talking about the inks. The inks come in many different ways. So this is one way, and this is a bottled calligraphy ink. So it is pre-made and it is a liquid form already. So I could pour that out and use that immediately. So I do that occasionally, depending on how and when I'm doing a calligraphy for somebody. My preferred method, though, is the traditional way, using something like this, and this is an ink stick. So this is actually made with different resins and things that they, sometimes there's different plant-based materials in here, or tree-based materials, or herbs, depending on who's making the ink stick. This particular one has an aroma to it, so you can actually smell, because a lot of times what they do is they're using natural woods and resins and things that they would create the ink stick out of. So it gets formed into this hard stick, and then you would take a little bit of water and you would grind this stick against a stone to produce the ink. So I have 2 ink stones here to show you. So this is essentially a piece of slate. This is a very inexpensive ink stone that I have, that it's easy to carry around because it's nice and small. It's a little coarser here, so when you're grinding the ink stick against it, it makes the ink a little bit faster, but it also makes the ink a little coarser. If I have a little bit extra time and I have more space to carry things around, I prefer to use this ink stone. So this ink stone comes from a special mountain in China where a lot of ink stones are made, because of the type of rock that's available there. So this is a type of slate again, but it's very smooth in here compared to this one, which is a little bit coarser. So very, very fine ink. So when you're using this ink stone to make the ink, it takes longer, but it produces a beautiful ink. Some of these could come very, very ornate. So this just has a simple wooden cover on it. So that's how it looks. Some of them have very ornate and carved covers. Sometimes the inkstone itself, it can be carved into all kinds of beautiful shapes. Those tend to be a little bit more expensive, but they're beautiful. They're beautiful to behold. A lot of artistic creation in some of these. So this is my preferred method, but it does take a little bit longer. Now, in addition to the length of time, for me as the person who's doing these calligraphies, when I'm making the ink using the inkstone, a little bit of water, and you're grinding against the inkstone, it becomes a meditative practice in itself. So that, I don't know if that's true for everybody, but that's what it is for me, is I allow myself to kind of get into a very calm and quiet place. So because the calligraphies I do don't come from my mind, I have to allow myself to be open to receive. So my mind is cluttered. If I have some higher emotional things I'm dealing with, I'm not going to receive well. I'm not going to receive those calligraphies well. So it may not come out as through me as well as it could, so I need to get my head straight. So I can't paint. I can't do calligraphies. I don't know where the paint word comes from. I can't do calligraphies if my head's not straight. If I'm agitated, if I have a high emotional state, if my mind is too busy, then I need to do something to get me out of that place and into the place to do this. So if I'm finding myself really, heightened mental state or emotional state, then I will grind the ink rather than using the liquid ink. And it really is a calming process, especially using a really nice ink stick. So there are different qualities of these, but it's worth it to pay a little bit more to get a nice, good quality one. It'll give you a nice, deep black ink that with a nice inkstone will be very smooth and it'll flow very well. In addition to that, there's a very nice aroma. So as you're making the ink, there's a very nice aroma that comes from creating the ink, and the experience of grinding it. And there's little people probably grind it different ways, but I have my own method of grinding. A lot of times I'm using like figure eights and so forth and circles, and it produces a calming, relaxation, meditative condition for me to prepare to do the calligraphies. So that's a lot of the different ways. There's a couple of, that's a basic ways I do the ink. When I do the calligraphy seal at the bottom, often if you'll see on the ones on the wall here behind me, sorry, you see a little red seal in the corner. Most of the time for those I'm using a bottled ink for that. The ink, you can get red ink sticks, but to get that deep red color, I find the bottled ink gives me that deeper, richer red color. That seems to be the contrast to the black. When I first started doing these many years ago, I didn't know what that seal and order was in the bottom. I just knew I was supposed to do some small little calligraphy. I didn't understand where it came from or what it meant. And so initially I would do this little small one in black. Once it was revealed to me what that was and what that was about, then that's when I was told to use the red ink. Now, the other thing I'd just share with you quickly here is you'll see, and again, the calligraphy is behind me, a red square stamp, and that's what this is. So this is made out of stone, and it is carved, and that image you see there is really on the bottom here. And I would, again, put ink is applied to the bottom of the stone, and then you stamp your parchment or scroll or rice paper, whatever you're using on. So that's pretty much the last part that I do when I'm doing these. First is all this preparation, choosing the size or the material I'm going to do the calligraphy on, choosing the brushes, choosing the ink stone or ink stick, or liquid inks, depending on many different things. Like I said, if I'm doing something where I don't have a really lot of time to spend creating the ink, then I will use the liquid ink. So then after I've done that, I've created, prepared everything. There's a spiritual practice and a mental practice that I do as well. I won't share that with you here because it's really beyond what I want to talk about today. I really want to share about the different tools, if we want to call them that. So I do that process. If I'm doing this one-on-one with somebody, I can either do this remotely or have them in person. And then there's a discussion and also a little bit of guidance that goes on with what is the message that that person is looking for. And that can come in many, many different ways. So I'll give you a couple examples of that. So some people have an idea of a message they would like to receive. So they know it's this message, but they don't know where it's coming from. Say, I would like to have, I'll make something up here, a healing message. So, okay, what kind of healing message? Well, I'm not sure. It's the healing message. Well, is there a specific thing you'd like to assist in healing? So then we'll have that discussion. And then I'll say, well, do you know where you'd like to have the healing message? They say, no, I'm not sure. Can you just open up and see what comes? And so sometimes that's how it works. So they ask for a specific message, and I go through my process. I open, and I'm going to say someone, but it's not fair to you. That's a human expression, right? So I'm not saying it's necessarily someone as a person who comes to me. A spirit, a soul will come to me, reveal itself to me, and that could manifest in many different ways. And they'll say, I'm the one to deliver this healing message for this particular person who's requesting it. And then they'll tell me what the healing message is that they're delivering. So that person can say, I want this type of message, I don't know where. Or they may say, I'd like to have a message from this place or this source, but I don't know what the message is. Can you just ask, right? So then I would reach out and ask that source, meaning it could be a spiritual guide, an ancestor, all kinds of things. And they may say, yeah, I want a message from here. And then they come to me when I request, and then this is the message that they share. So sometimes people would come and say, I don't know, I feel like I need something. I don't know what it is. I don't know who I want it from, and I don't know what it is. So in that case, then we kind of do a little bit of exploring spiritually, energetically, as well as interacting with each other to determine who that is. So I will again go through my own process and ask for a message and a messenger to come through to serve the person who's asking for the calligraphy. And so that's really what happens in the beginning is determine what that calligraphy is, who it's going to come from, what the medium is. Paper, scrolls, silk brocades, something other than that. Then it's determined, am I going to make ink with the inkstone? Am I going to use liquid ink? And what brushes to use. So a lot of times the brushes are inspired too. I'm not saying, well, this brush is used for this type or this type or this type. When I get down, I've got maybe a dozen to 24 brushes that I choose from. And I just sort of, okay, that feels like the right brush, that feels like the right brush. It's really going a lot by intuition, inspiration, and guidance. Then I open, receive the message, comes through me, calligraphy is formed. I ask for the seal and the order. Sometimes it comes from someone different than who's bringing me the message, sometimes not. That comes into play. When this process is going in, often they share something with me. So if I'm doing this just by myself to create a new calligraphy, a public type calligraphy, or one that I don't have someone with me, either in person or like remotely over a video conference type process, then I'll make notes as the ideas come to my mind. Sometimes I see things, sometimes I hear things, they'll tell me things, share things with me, so forth and so on. I'll write that all down, so I'll have a document of what's happening in the process. The reason I write it down is because it's not coming from me, it's coming through me. So if you ask me 4 or 5 hours later, What did they tell you? I can only give you the general ideas about it because I won't remember the intimacies of it. It's not my message. So unless I write it down, I don't get the intimate details. I can remember the generalities about it, but not the intimate details. So if I'm one-on-one with someone or over like a virtual conference of some kind, then I will record it. I often encourage people to take notes, and then there's a record of what was that message that soul was sharing with you in that day, and as a result of that calligraphy. And then that's how the process works. So once that happens, then you can learn. If you watch some of the other videos on my website, you'll see how do you activate the calligraphy, how can you use it in your life. But really today, I want to kind of share that the actual real process involved there, and the different tools or instruments, or I like to call them really my calligraphy companions in a way, because they play a very integral role of this process. And it took many years for them to come and manifest to me. In the beginning, I wasn't using brushes and I wasn't using these type of inks, and there was a multi-stage process that took 5 to 6 years for me to learn and understand how to do what it is I do today. And in the beginning, I didn't understand even where they were coming from. Essentially, what eventually I did get to know is that the very beginning times this was coming from my soul, if you want to call it that. My own spirit was sharing with me. And then as I grew further and understood further, it's like going through school. I had one teacher, learned what they wanted to share with me, and then another teacher, and then another teacher, and another teacher. So learning the calligraphies was a lot like that. My soul was the one who opened to begin to teach me and share with me energy and messages, and then other guides were guiding me on, go get this brush, go get that. It's like that, right? I was somewhere, that's the one you use for right now. So it's change, and it would guide me. And then, so there was like a different spiritual guidance in the process of which, should I do an ink stone? Should I get ink sticks, liquid ink, what brushes, all this kind of stuff. And then I understood my spiritual guides, if we want to call them, would be teaching me, yes, we can share message with you too. And then by the time the book Divine Messages came out, I started to understand that the divine may want to share at times as well. So when I offer this to someone, I tell them that to where I am today, it's almost anywhere you can ask for. I'm going to say almost, because I cannot say that if you say, I want to have a message from here, that I can guarantee you that that's where the message will come from. I can't, because it's not my decision. It's Spirit's decision. Sometimes people say, geez, I want this message, but they give a different message because they know that may be the message that you wanted, but this is the message that you need. So that happens too, where a different message comes forward than specifically what you may have requested. Or you may say, I want the message from here, but someone else came instead. So that happens occasionally too, because there is a different spiritual guide or teacher or mentor, whatever word we want to use there, who wants to come forward rather than the one you may be requesting. So that happens as well. So really, there's a lot of this, more of this is done at the spiritual level than at the physical level. So that's why I say I can't guarantee you, if you want specifically from here, that's what it'll come from, or this specific message, because it may shift based on what spirit is in their role in it plays a bigger role than what we decide. And we want to honor that, right? And I have to honor that. I can't argue with spirit. They're granting me this. So I always honor spirit before I honor human, because it's at their grace that I'm able to do this for people. So I just want to keep that clear so people understand that, there is a very spiritual, deep spiritual process involved here, and I need to honor them deeply to respect what they know more than I do. So that's how I process that. So almost anywhere. There are certain places that someone may ask for that I just may be told no. Yeah, don't go there. So, and again, if the Spirit guides me, no, don't go there, then I don't go there. I don't question it. I don't argue with it. I just completely accept it and follow the guidance that I'm given. So, thank you for spending a few moments with me, taking time out of your day to watch this little video on the different things that I use to manifest a divine spiritual calligraphy. So I hope you have a great day.